Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haere mai, and welcome to this week's episode of the Nichecast. We are here for our final podcast of 2022. We'll take a couple of weeks off over Christmas and New Year's. We will still be writing for our website, theniche-case.com, so there will be a trickle of Aotearoa sports content on our website, and we will continue with the Monday and Friday email newsletters via Substack, thenichecase.substack.com, over the next 2 weeks as well. So we're going to take a break for the podcast, but there will still be a lot of Aotearoa sporting content via our website, theniche-case.com, and our Substack email newsletter. Sign up, thenichecase.substack.com. Wildcarders, a little warm-up kōrero. I just got to exercise my loins. I'm preparing to do this big Kiwi-NRL power rankings yarn, and I need to, warming up to type just seems like the most, it doesn't seem cool, it's not as cool as swinging a leg or just getting the blood flowing. I guess you could do that to start typing, but there's not a specific warm-up typing thing you can do.
So, a few dynamic stretches,
yeah.
Click the fingers,
couple of finger movements, a bit of ground sitting, because you do, we're sitting at a computer, at a laptop for a while, so you do need to get into your ground postures, a deep squat, cross-legged, and so on and so forth, just to keep your hips open. But I digress. As part of my power ranking exercise here, I just want to drop a one word or an idea to sum up each Kiwi-NRL team. And if you're really tuned in, you're going to catch the order of the power rankings as well. So it's a double whammy. So let's just get underway, and I'll drop them all hard and fast, and then you can just note down anything that stands out for yourself, bounce back, and then we'll crack on to our Nichecast proper. Penrith Panthers, you got layers of winners. Obviously, everything is through the Kiwi-NRL lens, so I don't need to say layers of winners of Kiwi-NRL players. Panthers have layers of winners. The Roosters, funnily enough, they let Christian Tuipulotu go. They let Asu Kepaoa go, two high-profile Kiwi-NRL juniors. Coming into this season, they signed Jackson Paulo, Junior Ponga, and William Whakatau-Mawhai. So they've kind of just swapped out some of their Kiwi-NRL outside backs. The Melbourne Storm are in a rebuild mode, Kiwi-NRL styles. And if you're rebuilding around Nasana Sofa-Solomona and Jerome Hughes, you're doing pretty well for yourself. Parramatta Eels, development. Kiwi-NRL players get better at the Parramatta Eels. Cronulla Sharks, it's about the young leaders. They got some young leaders there, a lot of fresh thinkers, Ronaldo Mulitalo, Braden Hamlin-Uele, also someone like KL Iro, who is a hearty Cook Island, and of course his father defends the oceans of the Cook Islands as well. Canberra Raiders, I reckon KG for KG, they're a Kiwi-NRL powerhouse. The Warriors, survivors. They survived, they're here, they are survivors. South Sydney Rabbitohs, Josiah Karapani. Early last year, he was getting a bit of buzz, didn't play much. New South Wales Cup, obviously didn't play NRL. Full preseason, he's ready. Watch out for Josiah Karapani. Broncos, they went from developing Jordan Ricky, then TC Robati came through, then Xavier Willison came through, then Dean Mariner came through. So they're dealing in a lot of elite Kiwi-NRL talent. Gold Coast Titans, I'm just waiting. I'm just waiting for it all to come together. I've said they're a Kiwi-NRL powerhouse on the rise. They're still rising, and I'm still waiting. Newcastle Knights are a Kiwi-NRL hub. Bit of a stinky vibe around the NRL team, but they are a Kiwi-NRL hub, snapping at the heels of the Gold Coast Titans with just how much they love Aotearoa. Manly Seagulls, sneaky busy. I initially wrote down thirsty, and I think a more positive twist on thirsty is sneaky busy. They're sneaky busy in the Kiwi-NRL recruitment market, borderline thirsty, but that's all good, because everyone's thirsty for Kiwi-NRL talent. West Tigers, lots of chat. Lots of chat about what they're going to do, their junior player base. Obviously, Benjamin Marshall's talking up a storm. Tim Sheens loves the West Tigers junior stuff as well. We'll see how we go. Lots of chat there for the Tigers. Bulldogs taken over. Not very high ranked right now, but they are taking over the Kiwi-NRL market. St. George Illawarra Dragons, Navajo Doyle. And that's it.
Nice. I mean, the extra one I'd add, like the first thing that pops to mind is any prospective Redcliffe Dolphins ideas?
Redcliffe Dolphins are the Kiwi-NRL example. Because they are in their first NRL season, half their squad is from Aotearoa. So if we're, pondering the Kiwi-NRL takeover, obviously the newest team to the NRL is going to be heavily reliant on Aotearoa talent because the Kiwi-NRL takeover is live and in full effect. So, yeah.
Really? I mean, it's just the Dragons Navajo Doyle thing is very nice, but are you perhaps underestimating the impact of the great man Ben Murdoch-Masila and the outrageous impact he's going to have as a late signing?
Nothing official there, so we're just dealing in official business at the moment. So he might play a game or two, yeah.
Hey, that's better than not. That's better than none.
The best way to support the Niche Cache and all our content is via Patreon, patreon.com/our Niche Cache. So you can sign up to that as a member of the Patreon whānau, and we do an extra podcast every week there. Obviously, we won't be doing any over the next 2 weeks, but there is some older podcasts. We went deep into the Aotearoa Warriors last week or earlier this week. We've also done a deep dive into Blackcaps Test cricket over the last few weeks as well. So all of our Blackcaps versus Pakistan ideas are in those Patreon podcasts. So it's just a good place to get expand on a few ideas earlier in the week. But it's big up to our Patreon whānau supporting us through thick and thin, the ride or die Patreon supporters. We appreciate you and your constant support of the Niche Cache. And if you do want to join that Patreon whānau, patreon.com/our Niche Cache. Otherwise, just hit up the website. You can tell a friend, just check in. There's always lots of Aotearoa sporting information there for you. We always start, Chief, with a dose of mindfulness. What do you got?
Well, the old reason for the season, Mr. Jesus Christ, I thought it would only be fair if I dipped into one of his quotes, and I found a beauty of a one to end the year with for our podcasting endeavors. 4 simple words: peace be unto you.
If you can't find peace within yourself, you can't expect anyone else to, right? Like, you can't expect the world to find peace. So peace be unto you.
Yeah, I don't actually know specific because
Wait, maybe
I don't know
we
if there's a
should...
difference between unto and onto. I don't actually know. I grabbed the version from the what do you call it? The old King James, because that's the nice poetic-y.
Let's
it just means
reframe
two.
it.
Never
Let's
mind.
reframe
It's
it.
basically the same.
Let's hijack old Jesus Christ's mindfulness and let's go with peace unto myself. So there we're trying to channel the peace within ourselves, and it's a good place to start, because if you've got peace within yourself, you can always, it's just a good place, because then everything else reflects your energy as above, so below.
And we definitely wouldn't be the first people out there to hijack the word of Mr. Jesus. I think it's actually quite common practice. And I was going to say in the modern world, but I'd say for at least the last, well, obviously no more than the last 2,000 years, but for the last 2,000 years, I'd say that's been common practice. Yeah, peace is just a nice, peace is a nice state of being. It's a good place to be in. And you find peace within yourself, you'll find peace outside of yourself as well. It's kind of simple how that works. It's not a difficult equation, actually.
Especially when the peace within yourself, like the external stuff doesn't change, but the peace within yourself changes your perspective of the external stuff. So you can find peace in the external stuff, which is exactly the same, which just shows you how much power you have over everything, because it's just your perspective and the story that you are telling yourself. Bit of a situation. And we've had a couple of low-key niggly situations with Athletics New Zealand in recent times. They seem to be a very strange organisation, Wildcard, in what they're wanting to achieve and how they want to represent Aotearoa on the biggest stage. But this story brings together a couple of, like, you've covered the athletics beat for a while. You also have tracked a couple of Kiwis in the NFL. So this story brings together both of those thoughts. So I'm curious, what's the sprinter's name again? Sorry.
Osei-Nketia.
He has left athletics to take a career in college football, NCAA football. Not sure the standard of the old Hawaiians, if they're the top tier, whatever it is, I don't know. First question, how does this reflect upon Athletics New Zealand?
That sort of depends what you're reading, I think, because there's been a few, because there's the perspective that Eddie Osei-Nketia was kind of, I don't know, rude. I don't know, like that he didn't tell them what his decision, and they found out through the media, like everyone else. The funny thing is, I think we kind of had that scoop randomly before a lot of the Kiwi journalists who probably deal more specifically with like Athletics NZ press releases and things like that and contacts within the organization. They didn't know what was going on. I woke up to Twitter notifications from people who are from the like supporters of or whatever, the Hawaii University. I don't even know what the official thing is. Retweeting and quote tweeting a clip I'd done of the clip we'd tweeted out of him breaking breaking his dad's national record basically for the in the 100-meter sprint. Them sharing this, being like, look at this great athlete that we've signed, and me being like, wait, hold on, what? What's going on here? And then chasing that thing, because they broke the news on the Hawaiian side of things. Didn't seem to be any knowledge of it from a Kiwi mainstream media outlet perspective, whatever. That was kind of that was strange. Like, there's a little bit of a strange situation, but then at the same time you look at the flip side, which is, what does he owe Athletics New Zealand, who like didn't let him go to the Commonwealth Games when he had a thing that would have, his personal best actually would have got him a bronze medal at the Commonwealth Games, I believe. Obviously, you can't pick someone based on saying, like, expecting them to hit their personal best in the biggest race. You can't necessarily anticipate that. So you're looking for something like more what the average race might be when they're looking at his qualifying times. But like, I don't know. I thought that was rough at the time when it's not just Osei-Nketia either. It was, Zoe Hobbs, the top Kiwi women's sprinter, also hit the loose qualifying mark, but not the the concrete qualifying mark. There's like two. There's one where you've done well enough if your organization body wants to send you, like if they can afford it and whatever, then you might get to go along. There's one where you've qualified, it's like the stone wall, you've made it, they have to send you, sort of thing. They were both in that buffer zone. But both young sprinters, like, think of the experience they could have gained. I just thought it was weird that they didn't get latched on, and this weird sort of ideal of, well, if they're not going to compete for medals, it's not worth sending them. I think that's quite, I don't know, backwards thinking, and in a way where we've now seen what that can look like, because you hurt the feelings of an athlete enough, he no longer wants to play the sport. And the funny thing about this, and I think quite the exciting thing about this, is that he was quite a highly touted, I think, sevens more than rugby union player, but sevens can lead you into the 15 stuff. And I think he'd joked before about like he was just waiting for the Crusaders to offer him a contract or something like that. And definitely there was, I think, overtures from New Zealand Rugby, I think this is true, about him playing, like getting involved in the sevens program with an eye on like not chucking him straight into the national team or anything like that, but getting it like, let's see what we've got here and maybe we can develop you into someone who might be that down the line. now he's gone to American football instead, and all the quotes from him are being like, "Yeah, this is my dream. I always wanted to play this sport." It's a funny one, just considering how the national sport of rugby was interested, and he played a little bit, and there was that sort of like back and forth going on there. But it turns out the dream was just to play gridiron. I don't know, but yeah, I don't know. Dude, I've got some ideas on what that means in the future, but if you want to chuck back anything about like this present situation, the decision, and the rugby versus gridiron debate, I don't know.
Well, no, it's just moving forward. What is he as a American football kind of prospect? And my gut feel is that it'll be a fun story for a year or two, but he might not get anywhere. And if you're someone like him, you're like a career pathway might, like, sure, you might get a scholarship, you get a university education, that's all cool, debatable, like what that means nowadays. But if you had a career opportunity in rugby union as one of the fastest blokes in Aotearoa, that seems like a good move. And that never happened. So now he's off to American football. What are your kind of expectations around what he might be as an American footballer? Obviously, if you're fast, you're going to be a running back, you're going to be a wide receiver. Has he ever shown a good pair of hands? Like, those type of skills might help. So whereas you look at someone like Jared Hayne, at least Jared Hayne was catching the ball as a rugby league fullback and running into a scattered defensive line. There was a lot of that skill set. He did that at the highest level. Young Eddie played a bit of first 15 rugby. So it's just a weird one, and I'm curious to see how it pans out, because obviously American football, they want to expand around the world and do this and do that, get these athletes, get that athletes, and it's cool. It's a good idea. There's a couple of them, but I don't think it's going to expand to any great degree. Do you have any buzz, anticipation, expectation on how this might look in American football?
Well, initially I saw that he had committed to Hawaii University or whatever it is, with that clip of ours of him in a 100-meter sprint, and I assumed that he was just joining the athletics program. I didn't read that closely enough to realize it was like Hawaii FB or something like that, cheeky little like football reference or something in the hashtag. And then, yeah, obviously tracing that back a bit further and realizing it was a little bit of a surprise. I think, though, I don't know, I thought quite an exciting surprise, because I considered, because the immediate thing I thought of was the fact that he had been a rugby player. And I thought, well, if you've played rugby to any degree, you've at least got hands. Like, it's one of the things that I don't know if he's got Jared Hayne level under the high ball kind of hands, but he's at least, he can catch a ball of a similar shape. Like, it's one of the things people talk about with the All Blacks, like how even even their loose forwards are highly skilled, because everyone just grows up throwing a ball around. Like, you at least have an idea of how to run and pass. You're not just like the big man, tuck it under the arm to put your head down and run straight. It's more than that. So I expect he's got some skills. It will need development, obviously, but I think I was more excited about him doing this than going into some kind of rugby career. And I think, well, not obvious, the main reason is just because it's a contrarian take, and I like that. I find that interesting to see someone going against the grain. But also, I kind of just think he's better suited to it. Like, the type of athlete he is, the explosive speed of a sprinter, right? He's quite big. Like, he's not a tall, skinny Usain Bolt kind of sprinter. He is pretty stocky. Like, he can take a hit. And he won't have to tackle, playing as a wide receiver, which is what I highly expect him to do. I think he's probably too tall to be a running back. So you chuck him as a wide out, throw him the ball, running some routes down the field and whatnot, as they say. I think there's potential there. And he's not going to a university that I think is in like the top few conferences. So it's not necessarily, if he wants to make the NFL, he's either going to have to be absolutely unbelievable for this school, or he's going to have to transfer in a year or two. And I don't think a bigger school would have taken him when he has zero experience in the sport. I think you got to go to a smaller one, get your ins, develop yourself, show what you can do a bit, and then if you do well enough, you get that transfer to a bigger thing, and then maybe you try work your way towards potentially getting some kind of draft buzz, at least getting some workouts, seeing how it goes a few years down the line. Worst case scenario is that doesn't happen and he's not that good and he gets a free education. I think that's all right. And I think one of the things he said is that he felt like he was free to leave athletics now, having broken the national record, because that was a big goal. That was a big aim. He felt like he'd achieved something, left a legacy behind, and he's only like 21 or something. So, I mean, he could just go back to sprinting when he's 24 or 25. He could just try that, have another swing at it, and try making Olympics down the line. It'd be difficult to go out of it and then back into it, because it is quite a specialist, really refined, every split second matters kind of thing. But he's got the experience to hopefully be able to do that if he wants to. But in the least, I just think, yeah, this is a really interesting thing, and it will be funky to see how that translates, because there was that little Jared Hayne spell, wasn't there, where you had a few rugby league players being tossed up as, oh, well, what if they tried gridiron? Like, how well would that translate? And you always get Americans saying things like, well, if LeBron James had just played soccer from when he was a kid, then he'd be the greatest soccer player in the world, and things like this. Well, it's obviously not that simple. When you look at it from the other perspective of people who actually do swap sports, it's quite difficult. Potential exception being the rugby league, rugby union swap, but I think that's quite different, because you don't also have the culture swap when that's the case. But there was that little spell of league players toying in the wake of Jared Hayne, toying with the idea. Valentine Holmes going over there, and Jordan Mailata, for example, who was under 20s for the Rabbitohs and is now a really excellent lineman for the Philadelphia Eagles. Actually, he's turned into a hell of a player. Then it sort of dried up. Like there wasn't anyone who had the success that Hayne did, and it sort of dried up. Here's an interesting, different angle of that same conversation. So I'm curious how that goes, and I'll be quite excited to follow him and see what happens.
He would be a good rugby league winger, probably, like speed,
probably, yeah,
big unit, so he can take those hit ups. The other interesting wrinkle here is that he's going to college. He's not going through these overseas combine training camp NFL things, which is where there's a Ituali Louis, a young dude from Auckland who I think he went to De La Salle College, Otahu Junior. He showed up in the latest European kind of NFL combine.
There's a couple other Kiwis that have been involved in that as well in the past.
So he went from, he was playing, I think he might have played Jersey Flegg with the Tigers, then he went to Wynnum to start last season, the 2022 season, and then he picked up this NFL opportunity. Jordan Mailata went through that similar pathway. You look at guys like Jared Hayne and Valentine Holmes, they're going to these kind of IMG academies. They're getting developed that way. They're getting prepared in every way, shape, or form to be professional NFL players. That seems like a far more productive route than going to college. Like, if your dream is to play the highest level of that sport, I'd go through the international kind of combine scouting route. Whereas if you're going to college, you might have an NIL deal, so you might be getting some cash through that. You've got a scholarship, you've got an education opportunity, and of course, living in Hawaii seems pretty cool.
Sounds like good, yeah.
But it doesn't seem like the most serious, like, I want to play NFL pathway, compared to the trend that is happening right now, where a lot of these dudes are, like, the NFL is trying to get a more international flavor. They see Australia and New Zealand as pretty much a production farm, and that's why they've got those international combines to integrate that talent. That seems like the best pathway to pursue a career in NFL. So that kind of just fits into the weird, like, I loved the sport for so long, I want to play it, I want to give it a crack. It's just a bit iffy, but let's keep it moving here.
Well, yeah, because just the last point on that is those like NFL International and stuff like that, they're better pathways to get to the NFL quicker. You don't actually play much. Like, it is very much built around training and development and things like that.
which
At
is what he
least going to
needs.
college, he gets the game day experience. Well, it probably is what he needs, but also you still get some coaching at college and you get to play games. You get to be like, I scored a touchdown and it mattered. Like people cheered, there was a crowd. And he is a sprinter, you know, and sprinting, you're going to you're going to combines, to big athletic meets, right? And the 100-meter sprint is almost always the main event, right? And so that's the one everyone hangs around for. You got a crowd, everyone's buzzed. It only lasts 9 to 11 seconds, and it's like pure energy, pure whatever the word is. You know, there's an experience there that you'll only get playing college, where you know it's not quite the same as the other things, even though the other things would probably accelerate his development a lot quicker.
That's the insight, is he doesn't really appear to want to play NFL that much. Like he seems like he's going for the experience and everything you just said, whereas there is another pathway to fast track you to NFL availability. And yes, you can go through the college system to get there, but there's probably better colleges you can go to. There's like better systems you can go to where you can actually develop. So it is a bit strange, but it's happening. Blackcaps Test cricket is also happening, wildcard. Pakistan have named their squad, and there's a bunch of randoms. Azhar Ali has retired, so that's a good batter gone. They just got smoked by England as well. No Shaheen Shah Afridi. Shaheen Shah Afridi. Just doesn't seem like a very strong Pakistani squad, which, again, plays into my cautiously optimistic vibe here, wildcard. I'm actually eager to see this Blackcaps team play Test cricket against Pakistan, in Pakistan, and the challenge that awaits them there. How have you settled into just thinking about this series and what you're looking for, how excited you are, and because we have talked a lot about it over the last few weeks, like what's one idea, one take that you've kind of worked your way into?
Yeah, I hadn't noticed that Azhar Ali had retired. That is probably a welcome boost for the Blackcaps. I've also noticed a bit of buzz from some of the Pakistani accounts and various places, not suggesting it, but just considering the idea of what if Babar Azam wasn't captain anymore, which I think is very funny considering this will be the first Test series where Kane Williamson isn't the captain. And they've just had a series against England where Joe Root wasn't the captain, and Steve Smith is no longer the full-time captain of Australia and hasn't been for a couple of years. And Virat Kohli doesn't captain India anymore, and all this. I wasn't particularly optimistic about the series, but I think Pakistan's performance against England has given me a little bit more optimism. The idea that Azhar Ali take a very experienced, difficult to get out batsman from their top order out of the mix and replace him with, I think, well, they've called up a debutant fella, but I don't know whether he'll play or not. They've got other options, but it won't be. Basically, their batting lineup feels slightly weaker, and that's nice. They do have the new spinner with the glasses, with the mystery ball. I can't remember his name, but he seems pretty handy. But also, he's not Yasir Shah. Like, he's not the gun wicket taking spinner that they've had in the past, who is going to dominate the Blackcaps, because that almost always happened. They're up against a bit of an international rookie, if that's the case. The Tim Southee captaincy thing, I'm actually quite excited about. I think that's particularly because they picked Southee ahead of Latham. I think that shows it's not even anything specifically about Southee or Latham. I just think the idea that was the choice just says something a little bit more ambitious about this Blackcaps team and trying to shake things up a little bit more by not going by the conservative route, which has generally been how they've made decisions, is the safety first idea. So a lot of these things, since this tour sort of came into focus at the end of the 2020 World Cup, well, there was a cheeky little series with India, but that was not the same. Like this has felt like the next major event on the calendar, and I don't know. At that time, I wasn't particularly confident about how the Blackcaps would do. Since then, there's just been a lot of these little tweaks of news, which makes me feel like, at the very least, it should be a good competitive series. And if not, I think it's more likely that the Blackcaps do well than Pakistan do well. They seem to be in a bit of a troublesome place at the moment, Pakistani cricket, where they're just, I don't know, lacking for confidence and not getting the results. And they underperformed at the 2020 World Cup as well. And things like this. I don't know. It's much better poised now than it was a few weeks ago, I guess, is the point I'm saying.
I was just thinking, like, if you put the top 5 Blackcaps Test batting unit up against Pakistan's, I think you could favour the Kiwis, and I'd say the same thing about the bowling attack. Like, if you put Tim Southee, Neil Wagner, Ish Sodhi, Ajaz Patel against Pakistan's best 4 bowlers, I think the Kiwis are, obviously I'm going to say the Kiwis are better, but anyone can look quite favourably on that Blackcaps bowling unit. So you could say the Blackcaps are a better team. The only spanner in the works is playing Test cricket in Pakistan against Pakistan, which is quite tricky. And then you look at how England played against Pakistan, and I don't think the Blackcaps are going to replicate what England did. However, as you said, some of the selections fall into alignment with the idea of playing a more attacking style of cricket. Well, not more attacking, but just an attacking style of cricket, because I think the Blackcaps are
less not attacking.
Like, Williamson attacked.
Yeah.
Williamson was always quick to go body line and generate a wicket, but he does have just a more mellow, kind of passive personality, and I think that has changed now. So you've got some different selections. You've got Tim Southee as captain, and a curious idea. 2 ideas here. You've got the cautiously optimistic idea as well as blood in the water idea. And I think if you come out and you attack Pakistan and you try to get a bit of a bully the Pakistanis vibe going on, I don't know what their mana is like with so many young players and a rebuilding team, also coming off a 3-0 sweep against England. I feel like you could, I'm not sure about the chin of this Pakistani team. I reckon if you land a decent shot on their chin, they could be knocked out in the first round, and that would be great for the Blackcaps. I don't know if they're going to be absorbing shots throughout the fight, throughout the Test series, built on grit and mana and fighting hard for draws and that stuff. I don't know if they've got that type of juice in this Test squad on the back of being swept by England. Then again, national pride, they'll be eager, they'll be fizzing to get back into Test cricket and make amends. But I think the situation of Pakistan, combined with the slight shift, I keep referring to it as a refresh, a freshen up for the Blackcaps Test team, who also have been pretty mediocre in Test cricket over the past year, 18 months. I think it's all coming together for a very curious Test series. And of course, we're not complaining about playing a Test series in Pakistan at this time of year, because that means summer evenings are full of Test cricket. Super Smash is going to be flowing. So it's going to be pretty cool to see. Give me one batter, one bowler who you think is going to be in for a big series.
One batter, one bowler. If from the batting, I mean, it seems, I'm not necessarily saying top run score or anything like that, because it does feel like I should pick Kane Williamson and say, freed from the shackles of captaincy. Here we go. I low-key like the idea of Will Young opening in these conditions. I think we talked about this a little bit on the Patreon podcast. I think it was, or off air, I can't remember. He did sneakily well when they went to India the last time. I think he got a couple 50s. He did as well as any of our batters did in a series where we didn't score very many runs. And he's been in good form. across different formats domestically. He's coming into, I don't know, where were we? Because it's the start of a new test season, basically. Even though it's an away tour in summer, it's like the start of a new test season, and he is entrenched as an opening batter. Like him and Tom Latham will be the opening partnership. They've sorted this over recent times. I'm trying to think if this was the case last summer. Like, it was definitely, by the end of it, it definitely was. He was settled when they went to England, but maybe not quite at this time a year ago. I can't remember. That might be wrong, but either way, like it's the season where you're not trying to prove yourself. It's the season where you've settled your place. But also, he doesn't have a Test 100 yet. That's something to achieve. He's got a bunch of 50s. He's got some good starts. Doesn't necessarily have to score bunches of hundreds to be a good batter when you've got Williamson and Conway coming in at 3 and 4. He's got to set the platform, get through the new ball kind of thing, assess the conditions and whatnot. He's done that, but I think he's maybe poised for something bigger. And then as a bowler, I mean, it feels hard not to pick Ish Sodhi when it's his first opportunity to play Test cricket for about 5 years. Last time he played a Test, batted for the majority of the final day against England to salvage a draw in Christchurch. It was a fantastic Test match, that one. I think he batted for a while with, I think, Colin de Gronholm, and then I think Neil Wagner came in and closed it out. I think that was how it went down. But anyway, it was great batting performance from him, which his batting always feels like something that's been slept on a little bit. But here's an opportunity for him to actually play in good turning conditions. And he's fallen out of Test capacity, probably for like good reasons. But I've also felt like, because, he probably came into the team too early, at the Test team at least too early. And then, he'd bowl 5 good balls and then the one loose one that goes to the fence, and you can't build pressure that way. And he was still developing his skill set, and it wasn't quite, I think probably, I don't know. I think they just chucked him in at the deep end searching for a spinner in the post-Vittori days. And because of that, he got recycled back out and then goes to the back of the queue, got to work his way back up. I get the feeling if he hadn't played when he'd have played a lot more Test cricket over the last 5 years if he hadn't already had a brief Test career to that point. So I think he's a much better bowler now than the last time we've seen him in Test cricket. Throughout that time, like in that interim period, consistently taken Plunkett Shield wickets. Like, I think he's been up near the top wicket takers in a couple of seasons, which is difficult to do as a spinner, particularly a leg spinner, because the one way you can do that is to be Ajaz Patel, just bowling heaps of overs. You bowl more overs than everyone else, you might take more wickets than everyone else. So, yeah, this just feels like an opportunity which has been a long time in coming for him, and here we go.
Will Young, first class and list A average over 40 at the moment, which he's a couple of notches below Latudu Taylor, but Latudu Taylor is like 41, 42, 43 in Test and first class and list A. Will Young is now 40.25 in first class and 40.67 in list A. You're mentioning Ish Sodhi. All of the main spinners in Aotearoa, the averages are between like 29 and 33. And Ish Sodhi's average is only a bit higher than Ajaz Patel over almost a decade of first-class cricket. So there's just 2 stats to keep track of during this series. Let's do a little bit of Super Smash here, Wildcard. Obviously, Super Smash starts Friday. And then it just rolls along over the Christmas and New Year period. So we'll be here covering all things Super Smash over that period as well. Contrasting vibe between the 2 Super Smash competitions. Everything on the men's side is designed to take the best players away from Super Smash. Everything on the women's side is concentrated on the best players in the Super Smash, although the best players will depart later in the Super Smash for the T20 World Cup. So it's kind of like the way New Zealand cricket packages the Super Smash as like the headline act of the domestic summer, the most visible thing in domestic cricket. They do their best to take everything away from the Super Smash by when it's scheduled, and just the fact that the best players don't play Super Smash. That always seems like a strange thing for your marquee T20 competition, but we deal with it. We just do our best. And you will have a bunch of White Ferns over this initial stage of the Super Smash, many of whom are competing for T20 World Cup slots. Like you've got the best players like Bates, Divine, the Kerr sisters, Maddie Green, Leah Tahuhu, Fran Jonas, Haley Jensen, Eden Carson, Hannah Rowe. They're all going to be there competing to the best of their abilities. And then you got players on the fringe who I talked about in the variety show competing for selection in the batting department. Lauren Down with Auckland, Brooke Halliday with Northern, Georgia Plymouth for Wellington, Rebecca Burns for Wellington as well. They're all competing for a few spots in that White Ferns World Cup squad and first 11. Molly Penfold, even Hannah Rowe. I think Hannah Rowe should be playing a bit more T20 international cricket than she does because she's a good all-rounder, but her bowling isn't quite as good as you would hope right now. Rosemary Mair's been a very good T20 bowler. She's fallen out of the mix. Gabby Sullivan is someone to watch with Canterbury. She's one of the leading wicket takers in the HBJ Shield. And she's also a T20 factor with Canterbury. I'm pretty excited about the women's Super Smash and just the quality of talent on display, and seeing which of these players just says, yo, this is my competition. I am here to beat everyone up, and I'm just gonna score the most runs, take the most wickets. It's usually Sophie Devine and Susie Bates. Amelia Kerr is always in that mix. So I think you've got like a holy trinity of female cricketers in Aotearoa: Devine, Bates, and Amelia Kerr, which obviously means for Wellington, they've got two of that triangle. And Jess Kerr is a fantastic Super Smash cricketer. Maddie Green is in the form of her life, batting. Don't think you're going to see Maddie Green wicket-keeping for Wellington, even though I think she is the best T20 international wicket-keeper for New Zealand. Jess McFadden will probably take the wicket-keeping gloves and bat way down the order. But that is something to keep an eye on. And for the men's Super Smash, well, so for the women's Super Smash, I think we've still got this this middle class idea applies, where I don't think you're going to see any young player elevate to command attention. I just don't think the young players who could be playing in the Super Smash are going to do that. I don't think they're good enough. I don't think they have the skills. Like Leah Tahuhu ripped through the Auckland batting lineup in a recent Halliburton Johnston Shield game. I don't know if there's many young batters around the Super Smash who are going to be able to pull Leah Tahuhu's short ball for a boundary or a single. I don't know if there's many young batters who can hit Leah Tahuhu down the ground. Like those skill sets, I just don't think a lot of young cricketers in Aotearoa have on the women's side. So I'm not predicting that there's going to be a breakout women's player, like an emerging youngster, to shine in the Super Smash, which when combined with the T20 World Cup focus, I think you're going to see the upper tier, the White Ferns, the upper tier of the White Ferns and the players in the White Ferns competing for spots on the fringes of that squad. I think you're just going to see them dominate, and then it just becomes a fun battle between who's going to win games for their respective teams and whatnot.
How settled do you think that T20 squad for the World Cup is going to be for the White Ferns? Do you think there's obviously, I don't know, I think there's at least 8 players you could write in permanent ink on the team sheet. You could some of the ones you mentioned before about the the Holy Trinity, where one of them is called Divine, is a nice tweak as well. But there's obviously established star players for the White Ferns who are going to be in that T20 squad. Is there much on the fringes where you think there's players who could genuinely play their way into that consideration over the course of the Super Smash, like the last month or two that they have? Obviously, if someone just goes ballistic, there's a conversation to be had at least. But are there, do you think, as it stands, still positions to be sorted, or do you think it's more or less settled at this point?
I think the White Ferns squad is quite settled. I don't think anyone from outside the squad is going to be good enough to break their way into the squad. Like even like someone like Lee Kasprick, we know she's hard done by. We know she's a good T20 bowler. But I'm also not mad at a White Ferns team with Amelia Kerr, Fran Jonas, and Eden Carson. Like I've said that Fran Jonas is probably the best spinner in Aotearoa and one of the best spinners in the world. Amelia Kerr is Amelia Kerr. She's part of the Holy Trinity. And Eden Carson's probably my favourite domestic cricketer, like my favourite female cricketer in Aotearoa. Far better fielder than Fran Jonas, probably a better fielder than Lee Kasprick. Also an excellent T20 bowler. She was excellent in a Super Smash last season. And then this year in T20 international cricket, 6 White Ferns bowlers took 10 plus wickets, and Eden Carson had the second best average and the second best strike rate. So those are 3 excellent spin options. So it's hard to see Lee Kasprick breaking into that group, even though she is a fantastic cricketer who was hard done by. There's spots up for grabs in the batting role players, but then I can't see Kate Ibrahim breaking into the squad, right? Like the only way Kate Ibrahim's going to be in the mix or another T20 like players batter is going to be in the mix is if you lose a Susie Bates, a Sophie Devine, a Maddie Green, one of those type of cricketers. But with them in the team, you're looking for efficiency. You're looking for strike rates. You're looking for lots of runs off as few deliveries as possible. And then it becomes a battle between Georgia Plummer, Brooke Halliday, Lauren Down, and Rebecca Burns. Rebecca Burns seems like the best of those batters. And then I'd probably say just you can keep rolling with Plummer. Brooke Halliday is a lefty, so she's got that in her favor as well. But it's basically seam bowling department. You got Tahuhu, Jess Kerr, Hayley Jensen, Hannah Rowe, Molly Penfold, and then it drops off after that. So it's kind of just the batting role player and a seamer. So those are just 2 pockets to watch out for, but I can't see anyone from outside this White Ferns group breaking into the T20 World Cup squad. Someone to watch out for is Molly Penfold because she hasn't dominated domestic cricket. And if we're basing a lot of the upcoming stuff on who are the best players in Super Smash, to warrant White Fern's selection, Molly Penfold has to be taking Super Smash wickets. She's done a bit of it, not enough to be like a certified consistent White Fern at the moment. And to be honest, that goes for Brooke Halliday, Georgia Plummer, Lauren Down as well. Men's Super Smash, there are going to be some big Donnies floating around. Finn Allen, mandatory viewing. This dude is going to be smacking boundaries all around the park. Case in point, the most recent Ford Trophy game. 2 batters who I think are a few notches below Finn Allen, but they're in the same style. Always going to say Kartine Clark. He's like a B grade version of Finn Allen. Young right-hander at the top of the order who smacks boundaries. He's done it for a few Super Smash seasons now, and he's got experience. He's not going to, and the measurement system in my head that I had to assess this, I think at a Super Smash level, you're looking for Finn Allen to cash in 3 out of 5 innings. If we're going to T20 international cricket for the Blackcaps, we're probably saying Finn Allen, 2 to 2.5. Kartine Clark at a Super Smash level, I think he's a 2 out of 5 cash in, which is, he's a B grade Finn Allen. So he's not going to do it as consistently as Finn Allen, but he can do it, and he's going to destroy a couple of bowling lineups. And I think that Northern team has enough juice around Kartine Clark. Like Jeet Raval is going to be playing Super Smash. He is a Super Smash champion. Big up Jeet Raval. You've got other dudes like Joe Carter, Henry Cooper, Mitchell Santner might play a bit. So you've got these other good cricketers that allow Kartine Clark just to blaze boundaries at the top of the order. but he's like a 2 out of 5 innings he's going to cash in. Then you've got someone like Lou Johnson, very attacking batter for Otago, young lad. He had a fantastic Ford Trophy knock, but while Cartene Clark had a fantastic Ford Trophy knock, and then he followed it up with like 20 off 10 or 30 off 20, whatever it is, and those type of knocks, Lou Johnson went large, then he went low, and then he went low, then he went low. So Lou Johnson's probably a 1.5 innings out of 5. So that's like a scale. You got Finn Allen, Cartene Clark, Lou Johnson, just as some very attacking batters to watch out for. Also fascinated by the wicket-keeping situation, because Tim Seifert's going to be playing for Northern, Dane Cleaver's going to be playing for Central, Cam Fletcher's going to be playing for Canterbury. So there's only one specialist wicketkeeper with the Blackcaps. Because when you go ODI series, Pakistan, India, it's Tommy Latham, Stephen Conway. So that leaves 3 certified wicket-keeping batters who love Super Smash playing a lot of Super Smash, and that's going to be really interesting as well. Let alone the speed battle between Lockie Ferguson, you got a bit of Ben Sears, those type of battles as well. And also, I don't know, I don't want to think too big about the Super Smash, but I do want to highlight, like, all these teams might lose their best players at the end of the Super Smash. So it's like, whatever you do at the start doesn't matter. Like, even the women's, like Wellington will probably win every game until the end, and then they might play a semi-final and final without half their team. It's very strange, but that's what it is. So yeah, those are some pockets in the bloke Super Smash to keep an eye on. Any of your thoughts?
I mean, Tim Seifert's been scoring some decent runs lately, and Dane Cleaver's been scoring more than decent runs more than lately. Cam Fletcher hasn't really played much recently, has he? Has he been injured, or is there a situation there? Was he just taking a break or something?
I'd assume he's injured. He did come back in the Ford Trophy. He might have played one game. Canterbury had a very good wicketkeeper batter. I think his name is Mitch Hay, who was doing a job in the Plunkett Shield and through much of the Ford Trophy. Remember, the last kind of buzz about Cameron Fletcher was in T20 cricket. Like, people just saw him smacking Super Smash sixes. And then it kind of got overshadowed by Dane Cleaver. So I think Cameron Fletcher, like, might be tricky for him to find form early in the Super Smash, working his way back into a flow of cricket. But he is, like, all 3 of those dudes should be scoring a lot of Super Smash runs. Of course, we have highlighted previously that Tim Seifert doesn't necessarily blast 2020 knocks. Like, whether it's the Caribbean Premier League, whether it's like patches of the Super Smash, he hasn't been as dominant as you would expect, because he got overshadowed by Dane Cleaver and Cameron Fletcher. But all 3 of them should be playing a lot of cricket in the coming days, coming weeks. I'm thinking of just like a classy batter. Just a classy batter, because I did highlight some super uber aggressive batters, and then those wicketkeepers are all among the best Super Smash batters as well. I'm going to go back to that yarn I did earlier in the week where I highlighted Rob O'Donnell, Rachin Ravindra, and Jacob Duffy as blokes to watch out for in the Super Smash. And batting-wise, I think there is a lot of intrigue around Rob O'Donnell and Rachin Ravindra. Rob O'Donnell, he's got the second best T20 batting average for Kiwi batters ever. He's only behind Devon Conway. Devon Conway's like 2nd or 3rd in the world all time. And Rob O'Donnell's nudging the high 30s for a batting average in T20 cricket. He's also got 3 half centuries and 5 innings in the Ford Trophy. Probably be playing a lot of cricket with Mark Chapman early in the Super Smash. So that will help. Mark Chapman, he was stinking up a storm in the Ford Trophy, so hopefully he gets some runs in the Super Smash. But Rob O'Donnell is the leader for Auckland. He's their best batter. He's pretty awesome at T20 batting, and he's just a classy operator. Like, he can bat through an innings, he can up the ante as well. Then you've got Rachin Ravindra, who he should be there the whole competition with Wellington. might bowl a bit of spin. Like they will probably play him and Peter Younghusband, so they will split overs. In Plunkett Shield, Ravinja was operating as the main spinner for Trophy, shared that with Younghusband. I think they will continue into the Super Smash, but Ravinja is going to be
particularly because Michael Bracewell won't be there, who normally gets a few overs as well.
correct, and he will probably be batting up the order. So you might know Devon Conway, so you might get Ravinja and Fenelon, left hand, right hand combination, and that will give Ravinja some space to just go about his work in a more casual manner, while Fenelon is going absolutely bonkers at the other end.
Yeah, I just looked up Tim Seifert's recent scores as well, which has all the stuff from the summer, and he hasn't actually been scoring good. He hasn't actually been scoring many runs at all, but he did. The reason I said that is because he scored 100 in his most recent knock. Very much needed. He scored 250s, a 69 and a 73 not out in the Plunkett Shield, but his other 1, 2, 3, 4, his other 6 scores were all 13 or lower. And then he started off the Ford Trophy with 17, 11, 1. Cheeky 36 not out against Auckland, and then 103 against Wellington. So much needed big knock. But I do think he's probably in a position where he's had a few ups and downs of his career recently, and probably a couple more downs than ups in the last 2 years. So that worm is going to start turning back northwards at some point, because he's clearly too good of a batter, especially at Super Smash level.
Well, just on that, like a bit of context. Tim Seifert, he did hit a century in a game where Northern scored 381 runs. Cartonet Clark, 71 runs at a strike rate of 102. Jeet Raval, 81 runs at a strike rate of 129. Henry Cooper, 49 runs at a strike rate of 122. Brett Hampton, 31 runs at a strike rate of 206. So yeah, Tim Seifert did cash in favourable batting conditions. I don't know if it's a defining knock given the context. And let me just see what Wellington did in reply. Fenelon, 90 runs at a strike rate of 166. Nick Kelly, 66 runs at 18 strike rate. So lots of runs were scored. Wellington scored 348 in response. So maybe not the best knock to hang your hat on as a Tim Seifert defense, but he did score a century.
But when you haven't been scoring, you got to do something, and 100 is never a bad achievement. Like you can't ever completely wipe off 100 just to favorable conditions, because no one else turned up. He top scored there, and he was 103 of 87 balls with 6 sixes is still pretty handy. That's a little more than just cashing in, but yeah, he needed that, and I think sometimes you just need even if it is suited in your favor, a game in which there were over 740 runs scored in that match, even still, just runs on the board, I think, is often like a way of just opening the gate. From that point on, you can bat freely again.
Well, sorry, one more thing on that.
Yeah, okay.
Tim Seifert absolutely smashed Ben Sears.
Interesting.
And a few weeks prior, Leo Carter, he hit Ben Sears for like 5 4s. So Ben Sears hasn't been very economical recently, and Tim Seifert did smash him quite easily. So that's just an interesting thing to keep an eye on as well, especially when you consider like 4 trophy batters. I think Leo Carter might have been in Plunkett Shield, but those batters were already attacking Ben Sears. So the thing about T20 cricket is it's a bit easier to bowl because batters are taking chances on your deliveries. Batters have already been taking chances on Ben Sears' deliveries for, smacking them all around the park. So just keep an eye on that one.
Yeah, 1 for 77 off 7 overs for Ben Sears in that game. Not great. He actually hasn't played very much recently. He only played 1 Plunkett Shield game. He took 3 wickets for 35 runs. Didn't bowl very many overs in there, but he at least chipped in with a few wickets there. And then played a 4 trophy game against Northern Districts where he got 4 for 41. Then none for 30 against Canterbury. I don't know how many overs, it doesn't say, but then 1 for 77. Let me just check who we got out in the first time they played Northern. Got Kartene Clark, he got Joe Carter for a duck, and then he got Hampton for 50 odd, and got Pringle for the last wicket. So 4 for 41 of 9.1 overs against them the first time he played them. 1 for 77 off 7 overs the second time he played them, with a very similar lineup both times. There's a fair bit of fluctuation there.
Very different conditions, I'd say.
Very different. The first one was in Wellington. The second one was
Wellington.
Actually, no. The first one was in Hamilton.
Yeah.
The second one was in Anyway, well, that's interesting because I was going to ask you if there are any like specific bowlers you've got a close eye on coming into this one, and Ben Sayers is probably one of them. We've just pointed out he's been a little bit erratic and probably could use. I think probably what you're saying about Molly Penfold applies to Ben Sayers to an extent as well. I don't know that he's ever had a stint where he's than like a game here, a game there.
He's got multiple like seasons in different competitions with wickets and decent averages.
Okay.
Like he's got multiple Plunkett Shield campaigns averaging between 15 and 25. He's got good Super Smash campaigns. He's got good Ford Trophy campaigns. So that's why he became a Blackcaps factor, is based on that mahi. I will highlight, you can't go past Aditya Ashok with Auckland.
Yeah, there we go.
But you can't big up him without big upping Will Somerville, because Will Somerville's probably going to play Super Smash as well. He plays all formats for Auckland. He's always taken wickets. He just stunk up when he went to India with that test tour last year. So that's why he's kind of fallen out of the mix. Then you've got Tim Pringle for Northern. Haven't seen much of Joseph Walker and Freddie Walker for Northern. They might be injured because the Northern squad is going deep into their depth chart to get a couple of spinners. But you do have Tim Pringle, who played for Netherlands at the T20 World Cup, and he's just kind of easing into his domestic cricket career with Northern as a Daniel Vettori clone, really.
Yeah, I like Tim Pringle. He's a fun cricketer to watch bowling. You're right on Ben Sayers too. 49 first class wickets at 24.8, 33 list days at 32.3, T20s 34 wickets at under 20s 19.4. Decent economies in all three. I think maybe the reason it felt like he's slipped under the radar or just hasn't had a fully dominant campaign is, I think, more just because he doesn't play every game.
Yeah, so if you looked at if it is season splits, it'll be like 4 Plunkett Shield games this summer.
Yeah.
7 Ford Trophy games this summer. Most Super Smash games. So he's not playing every game, but I think that's all good. Like if you're trying to manage a hostile seamer, you don't necessarily want them playing every single game in every single format. But that's the thing. He is successful when he does play.
Yeah.
Until recently.
Well, until that one game. But I mean, even his 6 games for the Blackcaps, he's taken 6 wickets at 22.7. Economy of 7s.
Most of which were in Bangladesh, right? When they toured there.
Yeah, and I think a couple in that. I think he might have played a couple of the European League games as well. Those are all 2020s, of course. It's the only format he's played, but that's for the start of an international career for someone who has not yet played 30 games in any domestic format. That's pretty handy. Like there's nothing wrong with that. That's a good start. Like he hasn't been smashed first up. He comes in next time and takes 3 for 20 or something. That average looks amazing. Like he's on that fringe where it's he's starting to put together a nice little groundwork there. And then, yeah, admittedly, he hasn't played Australia and Melbourne or Sydney or anything like that. But, you know, one thing at a time. He is 24, though. He's probably older than it feels as a up-and-comer. I think he missed a few of his younger years with injury, which is
you don't
unfortunately a common thing for fast bowlers.
You got to be 30 to play for the Blackcaps. So,
of course, yeah. He's way ahead of schedule. Definitely for the test team.
I was just thinking about the group of seamers like Simon Keane, fantastic last summer in the Plunkett Shield. Hasn't really kicked on this summer, but he might get an opportunity in the Super Smash for Auckland. Matt Fisher, another one with sporadic appearances for Northern this summer. Really good last summer. quick bowler who could shine in the Super Smash. Brett Randall moved from Northern Districts to Central Districts. Not sure how much Super Smash cricket he played for Northern Districts off the top of my head going back to last summer, but he's probably a talented bowler that folks need to check in on. Brett Randall with Central Districts. Let's wiggle into Wellington Phoenix and Aotearoa Breakers here. I kind of want to morph it all together just as we finish the podcast and get a sense of how you're feeling about these three teams, Wellington Phoenix men, Wellington Phoenix women, and the Breakers over this Christmas period. So we're going to be tuned out from the podcast. So I kind of want to set up what's going to happen and how you feel about these three teams over the coming weeks. The Breakers seem to be playing Tasmania Boxing Day. That's an away game in Tasmania. Then they come back for January 4th, home game against Perth, and January 8th, they are away to Adelaide. So they'll probably be playing 2 games over this next period. Wellington Phoenix women, they play on the 27th. They got a game against Adelaide, and then they play Monday the 2nd against the Western Sydney Wanderers. I think that Monday the 2nd of January is a bit of a party in Wellington because the Melbourne Phoenix, they're going to be playing against Melbourne City. But first, they got the Distance Derby Christmas Eve. That's Christmas Eve morning, not necessarily...
Yeah, Friday night leading into Saturday morning. So the overnight of the 20, what's the dates? 23rd to 24th.
So technically it's Friday Perth time.
It's Friday night, but it's technically, it's Friday night Perth time, which is the 23rd for them. So
it's like, it's Christmas
unfortunate
Eve, but
timing,
it's not
really. But I guess most people don't have to work that day. Some do, but not everyone. It is Christmas Eve, so that might be a helpful factor.
So who are you looking at to get through this period in the best way?
Well, they're almost in 3 kind of unique situations, those 3 teams, because I think the Wellington Phoenix men, really good morale boosting win on the weekend, showed some good signs, improving a couple of areas where they have been found lacking so far this season before the World Cup break anyway. And I've been really high on them from the very start, and I think they still should. Like, they're a late equalizer in week 1, and then 2 late goals sending them to defeat, blowing a 2-0 lead in a game they also missed a penalty in that Western United game just before the break. They win both of those games as they should have, based on the performances that they gave. It's touch and go in the 10-man game in week 1, but they were 1-0 up heading into injury time. So you should win from that situation anyway, whether you deserve to on the performance or not. And I'd say slugging away with 10 men for as long as they did, they probably did. Like, they should have won those 2 games. If they had, they'd be way up near the top of the table. We'd be talking about 3rd place probably, I think. I haven't worked it out, but if you gave them an extra, what would it have been? An extra 5 points on the ladder, I expect that would take them up to around 3rd, if not 2nd. Like, I still think they're that team. Like, I think they've played well enough to be up there. They're not there, but that's because they've made a few silly mistakes, and I think they're coming back around to where they should be. And I genuinely think they could be at the start of like a 4 or 5 game winning streak or something like that. It might not happen. It probably won't happen, but it's a possibility. The way they've been going, I think they could just click. And when that happens, there's no runaway leader. Well, maybe you might say Melbourne City are the runaway leader in the A-League men's, but they've swapped coaches, so that might also be a factor that halts them just a little bit and brings them back to the pack. Even beyond them, though, there's no clear second best team. It's a wide open thing, and a good month of form. I keep saying this about the Phoenix men. A good month of form, you go firing up that ladder. I'm hoping that's what they're into now, because I think they're playing well, and I think they're a really good team, and I think there's as higher hopes as I've had for Wellington Phoenix men's season ever. So, I mean, I'm all positive about them. The Breakers, I think they're in a little bit of a tricky situation somewhere in the middle where they've been really good. They've lost 2 games in a row, though. And not only have they lost 2 games in a row, but they've since had 2 games postponed because of a COVID outbreak within their squad, not being able to travel to Australia because of that, because they didn't have the numbers. That's an unwelcome hassle at this time of the season, not the least of which because they got to replay those games. And I think this next round, they're only playing the 1 game. I think that it's Tasmania on Boxing Day, I think. They're playing that game as the 1 game they've got in round 12, whatever they're up to. After that, I'm pretty sure they have multiple games in every remaining round of the season. Like every single round to go, they'll be playing twice, 2 games a week. Some of those will be home, some of those will be away. One of the games that got postponed was a trip to Perth, so they're going to have to squeeze that in somewhere. One of they're going to be having to play on short notice after a trip back from Perth. Difficulties abound when that's the kind of situation you find yourselves in. So the Breakers have been really good to this point. I think they do love a bit of adversity, this particular group, the Modi Mayor Breakers with Derek Pardon, Jarrell Brantley, and Barry Brown. I think these dudes do like a little bit of adversity. I don't think that's necessarily something they're going to shrink away from, but physically that's going to be grueling, particularly the way they play, which is very quite like defensively locked in, no possessions off kind of thing. Yeah, I think that's tricky for them. So they've been really good. If they can just keep it steady, they're going to find themselves into what is an expanded playoffs, because I think there's like a play-in type tournament now. However, because of that, I think it's top 2 go straight through, and then the next 4 play off to see who makes the semis. So finishing second and finishing third, they're second as it stands, I think. Although Sydney did Sydney lose their most recent game? I can't remember. They might be back tied with them now. Anyway, I don't expect them to finish ahead of Sydney Kings, because I think Sydney are better. They've beaten them twice, and they have all the fixture list for the Breakers coming up is going to be just absolutely brutal. So I think that's going to probably cost them top spot. The difference between second and third is going to be massive if that's the case, because you dodge the play-in, assuming I've got the format right, because I would need to double check that. But that's where they're at. Just keep it steady. Like the one team's massively on the rise. One team's got to keep it steady. And then the Wellington Phoenix women are on a 5-game losing streak. I think their most recent game was their best performance. I think it was their most complete performance. I think they created some chances in ways that weren't just random defensive mistakes. Like they actually got some transitional attacks going on and defended as well as they have. Just unlucky with a bloody stupid, sneaky little awkward own goal in the first half, which, I mean, yeah, if you're going to lose 1-0, you'd rather someone just hoof one into the top corner from 20 meters out, and you'd be like, well, it's a great goal. What are you going to do? An unlucky own goal is quite rough, and particularly rough on Mackenzie Barry, who I think has been quite comfortably their best defender throughout the whole season so far. I think it's not even a debate, I don't think. Midfield performed way better was the main point from that game against Adelaide. You brought in Grace Wisniewski to partner Betsy Hassett, which meant Betsy Hassett could go a little bit further forward, a bit more freedom. She wasn't being caught against the press a bit more at the base of the midfield, as happened against Canberra. Wisniewski could be the more defensive player, but also she's got the energy to still get forward when the opportunity arises. Chloe Knott, I think her natural tendency to just cover as much ground as possible is way more useful in an attacking position than it is in a midfield position, where sometimes she was, leaving Betsy Hassett isolated because she was doing too much work and trying to, do what others maybe just like delegate to others kind of thing. I still don't think they've clicked on their best attacking formations, and I think Mickey Robertson is going to have to start, because I just don't think you have a better a more rounded option in those positions. But even in a very quiet game from Emma Ralston last time, she did play 90 minutes, and that's a big boost, because she's, had her injury problems to start the season. I think that helps if she can get going, get a bit of match rhythm as well. She's a player with also quite a complete technique and a bit more class to what she can do, just as a more experienced player. Alyssa Wynnum didn't play last game. She'll come back in, if not this week, then soon. Like, they've got to figure some things out. Personally, wouldn't be averse to dropping Paige Satchel and trying her as an impact player off the bench instead. Maybe even Ava Pritchard with, I think, potentially it might be a better idea to start Chloe Knott as the striker when Wynnham's available and just have Knott for that high pressing ability. There's ideas to figure out there, but I do think that was their best performance, and I don't think he can be. It's too easy to be clouded by the fact they've lost 5 in a row. I think they play Adelaide again, don't they? If they can deliver something similar and maybe just get a bit more luck, less impact from the Adelaide keeper having a blinder and things like that, you see what happens. Like change a few things and they might get a result there. Also, Western Sydney is the game after that. Western Sydney haven't won a game yet. Western Sydney aren't doing very well themselves. That's definitely a game to target for a result. So if they've still lost 7 out of 7 in a fortnight, or whatever, if they still haven't had if they've got no points on the board when we get back to podcasting in 2 weeks, I'll be a little bit disappointed, to be honest, because I think the trajectory says they're closer than it might seem.
Wellington Phoenix women, they are last. 3 teams have 1 win and 2 teams have no wins, including the Wellington Phoenix women. Wellington Phoenix men, they are 6th. So we'll see how they wind up. And yes, the Breakers are first. 11-5 with the Sydney Kings. First via points differential.
Even though they've lost to the Kings twice when they've played them. Whatever. The Kings obviously didn't win by enough. That's their problem. If they won by more, they might have covered that points difference.
So we've got the Breakers are first. Oh, crikey, losing the voice.
Better stop podcasting for 2 weeks.
Yeah, Breakers are first. The Wellington Phoenix women are last. The Wellington Phoenix men are 6th. So we'll see how that winds up after the New Year's. Pick it up to yourself. Kia kaha. Stay beautiful. Cha-cha.